This is the M8 Competition, the latest BMW to have the hallowed 13th letter of the alphabet applied to it. In terms of price, it sits at the very top of the M tree, starting at £120,000 in the UK. And this particular car has the Ultimate Pack, which is essentially a £20,000 way of clicking Select All on the options list, giving you more carbon, including the carbon ceramic brakes with their nice gold calipers, more sound, both inside and out, more speed, up to 189 miles an hour, and some lasers. The M8 is also the most powerful M car ever produced. Under the bonnet is a 4.4 litre turbocharged V8, putting out 616 brake horsepower and 553 pounds-foot of torque. Now, that last figure is actually identical to the M850i that I drove on these very roads about a year ago, also with a 4.4 litre turbocharged V8, and weighing about the same. So what's different with this? Well, obviously you've got more stiffening in this to make it more precise. You have the ability to decouple the front drive shafts, which we'll get to a bit more in a moment, to make this rear-wheel drive only, and obviously you do have more power as well. But although you get the ability to have this as a rear-wheel drive, curiously this actually does without the four-wheel steering of the M850i. Now, I found the 8 Series so far a slightly curious car to get my head around. BMW said it's its first real foray into luxury, and it's persisted with this. It says that this is the first M car in the luxury segment. Does it feel luxury? Well, I like the Bentley aping diamond pattern leather, the M Sport chairs are very comfortable, and the more normal gear selector is a step in the right direction compared to the hideous glass thing that was in the 850. But to me, the interior is still a little too closely related to a 3 Series to be classed as genuinely luxury. However, if you define opulence by the number of things available to push, then the M8 is arguably the most luxurious car on sale today, because this has an enormous array of buttons. Now, I've been critical of the big tablets and everything going touchscreen, so I do like a button. I think that's very good. However, I think perhaps they've taken it too far. There are buttons everywhere, including these new red ones up here, which we get also in the M5. However, they have done something quite good, because one of the extra buttons you get is the M mode button down here, and that actually makes everything much more simple, because you have road, sport and track, and they progressively reduce the screens down so that in track actually that doesn't exist at all in terms of a screen, and it's very focused in here, which just I think is really nice. It makes you think only about the driving. And when you focus on the driving characteristics of the M8, I think its luxury aspirations are a little clearer. You see, despite this being an M8, it feels fast, but not terribly furious, I suppose. The engine gives the car a wonderfully effortless feel, really. It's not like an M3's engine, which can sound really angry. It's always mellifluous. At times, actually, to be honest, it sounds like a hotter Golf R or something like that. The fact that this has an admittedly excellent 8-speed auto box instead of a DCT also adds to the sense of a drivetrain that is more effortless than edgy. That's not to say the nearly 2-ton M8 isn't devastatingly quick in a straight line, however, with 62 miles an hour coming up in just 3.2 seconds and 124 miles an hour in just 10.6 seconds. It certainly feels like it justifies its sonic speed blue paint. Anyone else conjuring up an image of a hedgehog behind the wheel? The steering is very accurate, but it's also very light. It's not, I'd say, traditional M-car steering, which can feel quite heavy and gritty and rather nice actually, but quite a workout. This does feel like a slightly softer edged M car. That's not to say it can't be fun, and for those that have said this is just really an M5 in different clothing. Yes, I get that, but the shorter wheelbase definitely helps. And it is a surprisingly agile car. It's actually quite confidence inspiring to chuck around, particularly if you if you put it into rear wheel drive. Now, it is fun in the 4-wheel drive Sport, which is more rear biased, but I've had a lot of fun with this in rear wheel drive today. It never feels quite like a car that's completely natural. You can feel things going on in a way that you don't, say, with a Ferrari and all its systems. But it is lovely having a big rear-wheel drive front-engine car. And on the roads out here, it's been huge amounts of fun. I think it's a shame, actually, you can't have it rear-wheel drive with the M dynamic setting. You have to turn DSC all the way off, which I imagine would understandably put some people off using it.
In terms of the other modes, well, let's just say there are a lot, which is potentially good for tailoring it to different roads and conditions, but potentially bad for creating anxiety about not having the car set up in its absolute sweet spot.
One of the many things you can change in all these settings is the braking. In fact, you can go between comfort and sport in terms of responsiveness. And I have tried both, and I have to say, actually, comfort is much nicer on the road. You just get more progression rather than getting that sort of that jumpy feel right at the top of the travel. I do love this corner. For a big car, it's surprisingly agile. That MDNA certainly is in there. What then to conclude about this M8 competition? Well, I think adding competition to the name is even more of a misnomer, really, because it just doesn't feel like the sort of car that, I'm sure it would be fine on track, but it feels like a road car that should be sort of compared more to a DB11 or, let's say, a Bentley Continental GT than the Vantage or a 992 even. And given all that, I think there's actually another variation of this M8 that somehow makes even more sense.
This is the convertible version of the M8 competition. It weighs 125 kilos more and has a fabric roof that can be raised or lowered in 15 seconds, neither of which sound like ideal additions to an M-car recipe. However, it retains extremely impressive chassis rigidity, which means it really doesn't feel compromised in terms of handling and fun on a good piece of road. You can certainly still drive the wheels off it when the mood, with a capital M, takes you. But importantly, when not pressing on, the convertible M8's ride felt slightly more compliant and refined, while the overall sense of occasion and grandeur was definitely taken up a notch or two with the roof down. In short, while I enjoyed the coupe, if the brief was an M car with a leaning towards luxury rather than intimate involvement and outright thrills, then the convertible version of the M8 actually seems to fit the bill just that little bit better.